All right. Hi, everybody. This is Amy King again with GradLeaders. Thanks so much for joining us this afternoon. We are super excited to be joined today by Amanda Keller, who is the Associate Director of Fellowship Recruitment at Building Excellent Schools. We have proudly partnered with BES for the last several years. They leverage our GradLeaders recruiting software to find and connect with your brilliant candidates. So again, we're very pleased to have Amanda. And Amanda, I'm going to toss it to you to get underway.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for taking y'all's time out of y'all's day to chat with me as well. I'm excited to talk about BES and what I love about BES and what I do at BES, and then learn a little bit more about you as we go through this process, whether it's right now or after the fact. And so I hope each of you are doing well and navigating the current climate as smoothly as possible. I appreciate, again, y'all's time. I know it's a little rocky for everyone. First things first, as we go through these slides, please feel free to throw your questions in the chat box. If you're like me, question comes up and then later you forget about it. So please throw your questions in the chat box. We will have Q&A at the end, but if there's something that formulates or triggers a question, please go ahead and put it in there and I will answer it as we get going. And so let's go ahead and jump in. So just a little bit of information about myself. So you know who you're talking to. My name is Amanda Keller, you already know that, and I'm the Associate Director of Fellowship Recruitment here at BES. I've actually been in the nonprofit and education world for about 15 years, and I've been at BES for going on 4 years now. And before BES, I worked at Teach for America here in Las Vegas, and then I also worked at Idea Public Schools in San Antonio. I'm originally from Texas, but now live in Vegas. And just a little bit of background. Exciting thing about living in Vegas is we actually have the fifth largest school district in the country. We serve about 330 students and have over 300 schools. And so it's really exciting to see what's happening, at the same time trying to fix things that need to be fixed here in Las Vegas. And I get to have a hand in that firsthand perspective with our schools here and in the traditional public schools as well. I want to let you all know that, first of all, this will be a very high-level overview of BES and the fellowship. I encourage you to reach out to me after this call to schedule one-on-one time if you want to chat further. Everyone has different experiences and questions that are specific to them, and I'd love to answer those for you. And most importantly, if you're interested in applying now or in the future, I want to prepare you for what to expect during that process. If you don't know what we want to glean from you in the application and interview, then you're not set up for success, and that's what I want for you, and that's actually part of my job. So BES, our mission is simple. BES identifies and prepares excellent leaders to transform education in their communities. We look at ourselves as a leadership development nonprofit organization. If you're familiar with us, then you're likely aware that we used to be Building Excellent Schools. We changed our name this past summer because while most people know us for the fellowship, which is our flagship program, we actually have several other programs under the umbrella of BES, and I'll talk a little bit about those in a bit. So these next two slides is what we are all about. These are the beliefs across all of our programs and across all of the schools that we support and open. So I'll give you about 10 seconds to read the 10 beliefs that we have as an excellent school leader. And I'll also plug in the fact that on the right-hand side, that is David Singer. He is a 2011 fellow. He opened University Prep in Denver, Colorado. And we are actually currently looking for a fellow to identify to open his third campus in Denver. And then this next slide is what we believe makes an excellent school. Again, 10 bullet points that really sums up what we believe for all kids and what all schools should possess to make a conducive learning environment for students that is both rigorous but joyful and fun. And then that's one of our scholars on the left from Great Lakes Academy in Chicago, Illinois. And just to give you a little bit of context about where we are. So we started the fellowship in 2001, we have opened over 185 schools across the country, across 21 states. And we now educate about 58,000 students. And so looking for fellows in all of these communities is exciting, and looking to identify leaders that will open schools in these communities is really exciting, in addition to the ones that are already there. So just a little bit of background, or just a little bit of overview around our, around who we actually impact, who are our students, and what does that look like. And so on average, you can see our demographics here at the top. And then in the right box to the right of the screen, you can also see how our schools have performed in ELA and math against their district and state. And then the bottom data set shows students with special needs and free and reduced lunch English language learners and how we service them. And then within our schools, the student characteristics may vary, but these are statistics taking into consideration all of our schools' data points. And then, as I mentioned, we have other programs that we have at BES that we help support. We have trained over 2,500 leaders across 2 decades of operation. And just to give you a little bit of background, these are the 4 other programs that we have here at BES. And happy to talk to you about those individually and how you can help support graduates and leaders in looking more into these programs. And just a little bit about what we're looking at coming up in the following school year. We know that COVID has really rocked our world and rocked our students' world. And so we're looking at all these stats now, and we at BES have realized that the issues of equity and access are more apparent than ever. There was already an achievement gap and an opportunity gap, and that's going to be even greater once we come into the following school year. So it's so important that we're able to help leaders find us and take this work on in those communities. And so this is an overview of the fellowship. Very quick 4 bullet points of what our training looks like. And I'm actually going to dive in deeper to these so that you can have a better understanding and to talk about it. But at the same time, again, love to talk to people one-on-one. So please feel free to forward me anyone your way that wants to learn more, and I'll talk about this. But these are the 4 years of the training program. The BES fellows, we look at them, everyone always asks me, what does a typical fellow look like? And we really don't have one. But if we were looking at traits, these are really the big ones on the right-hand side. I would say that I always like to describe it as being confident and humble at the same time, because this is a leadership development program that is going to push new leaders and experienced leaders very hard and really open their eyes to different aspects of school leadership and school systems. And so year 1 of the training year, something that is really, really attractive to people that come into this program and something that really resonates with people is the 75 days of practice-based training. So our fellows actually work under our cohort. They get to visit about 50 of the top performing charter schools across the nation. I know you're probably thinking like, what are you talking about? That's crazy. How are they going to do this coming up? Something we're trying to work with through not right now. Probably the travel won't start until that January, but if you know anyone that works in a school, or if you worked in a school site before yourself, then you know how important it is to implement evidence-based practices and all of those pieces. And so during this training year, the fellow does those visits. They build a board. Each of our schools is independent, so we're not like a KIP or an Achievement First, if you're familiar with those organizations. So that's another great aspect and attractiveness to the fellow, is the autonomy that our fellows do get with their charter application and those pieces. And then in year 2, once the fellow has their approved charter in place, which is a huge undertaking, they actually get to go into the planning year. And this is where their autonomy really gets to come into play. And again, really an attractive part of the fellowship. With the support from us as well. I don't want to imply that they're free to do whatever they want. They do have that structured support from us, which again is great, because founding leaders that come in for the first time have usually never done this type of work before. So having that support from us, again, is a really attractive quality of the fellowship and support to get their school off the ground. And then our fellows actually open the doors of their school starting in year 3 and welcome their founding cohorts of students. And this is where BES supports in various ways as well. Again, the fellow is not doing this on their own. We help with staff recruitment. We help them build their leadership development, identify those blind spots, things like that. We help them with those data analysis, action planning, and closing gaps. We look at ourselves as a consultant to the fellow, again, not managing them, not governing them, but helping support them and making sure they're successful. And just as an example, Democracy Prep, if anyone is familiar with that, they are out. They launched their first school in New York. They've been around since 2005, 2006. Seth Andrew was one of our very first fellows who came into the fellowship. He founded Democracy Prep. They have over 20 campuses, and now they still get that support from us all of these years later because those founders know how important it is to continuously improve. And then going into year 4 of the fellowship, which is actually year 2 of operation, this support continues. If anyone's familiar with BES or Building Excellence Schools in the past or our programs, this is a slight change because we were seeing that year 2 of operation was really where the fellows needed support more than ever, even more so in year 1. So that is actually continued as part of the training program. And so a little bit about our application process, just so you know how it works as you speak with people or you relay this information, is that it's a pretty intense process. And again, that's my job, is to walk people through that. And so we do a first round of initial application, then a video interview, and then there's typically two phone interviews. And what we like to do is really, if possible, put our prospective fellows into schools, have them see our schools and see what they're all about, so that they can get that perspective of what our schools are not and what our schools are, and if it's a match for them. And then finally, typically it's in-person interview in Boston where we're based, obviously not happening, and then we would do a Zoom interview with our candidates. So again, process takes about 4 to 6 weeks, just to give you a little bit of perspective. It's a very intense process, and there's various layers that we assess at each of those steps. And then some of the priorities that we're still looking for 2020 is, just to give you an idea, is like we're still in recruiting season. We're still in hiring season. And so our regions do change from year to year. We have, as you saw, 185 schools. But these are 4 of our regions that we're still looking for the 2020 school year, and still actively recruiting for as well. So I know that was a very quick overview of the fellowship and specifically, and I know that I touched on some of the other programs that we have. So want to use this time to answer questions that I can. What can I help you with? What details would you like to have? I'm here to answer those questions for you. Hi, Heather.
So one question is, how should, since the folks on the call are career services professionals,
Yep. Mm-hmm.
What is the best way for them to relay this information to students? And since you're still looking for fellows right now, what is the timeline for them to, like, that they should get this information to interested students? And how should they do that?
Yeah, I would say yesterday, if you're talking to anyone on my team. But what I can do, whatever the best way for you is, I can share this information with you and you can share it with all the participants on the call. And I know this is a big PowerPoint. I actually have some links that are directly to our website, and actually a one-pager as well that's super helpful, that really sums up those 4 slides. So I'm happy to transfer that information to you, and you can distribute it as you wish. But also happy to, my contact information is right here. Also happy to have people make e-intros to me, and happy to, again, do webinars that are specific to their student population and whatever information would be useful for them to have.
Perfect. Thank you.
Uh-huh. And I do want to just say one thing that I mentioned, that someone always asks me what a typical fellow looks like. While your resume is so important, and we know that, our founder, Linda Brown, used to always say it's much more than what you see on a resume, and much more than the letters after your last name. And it's much more about those attributes and characteristics that you bring to the table. But just so your information, for your information, if I was to say, person has A, B, and C experience, what we see is it really does have a wide range, but we look for individuals, and I'm sorry, most of our fellows do have a range of experience in instruction or leadership between 3 and 7 years. It really does vary. And then I also want to say that not all of our fellows come from an instructional background. We have a fellow out in LA. He is actually a former lawyer. It's much more about those leadership capacity and attributes that you bring to the table. So as you're thinking about potential students and individuals in mind, I would say don't limit it to someone like, oh, I know this person has been teaching, or I know this person is interested in teaching. It's much more than that. And again, I'm happy to chat with anyone that you think may have those attributes. And I talk to people for 3 or 4 years before they actually apply, because they want to grow their own leadership and they want a few more years under their belt. And that is absolutely fine as well.
Thanks, Amanda. That was actually one of the questions that someone just typed in, was how important is prior experience in education? So the next question that just popped in, Amanda, is the training and investment in fellows is significant.
Yeah.
What is the completion rate, and
Yes.
where are fellows landing following year 4?
Yep, great question. Love this question. So like any organization, we stat everything, we track everything. So keeping in mind, we launched the fellowship in 2001. And since 2001, 79% of admitted fellows have completed the fellowship. And then 97% of our fellows have submitted their charter applications. And then 93% of those BES-backed charter applications have been approved. And so we always talk about the fellowship, it's specifically the fellowship, not including our other programs, as like a 7 to 11 year commitment. Once your school's open, great. Year 1 and year 2 of operation, that's where the hard work really begins in terms of scaling up your school. But that's not to say that we expect our fellows to stay with their schools forever. That is not the expectation. And just as an example, let's say for instance, we have a school leader that opens a K-5 school, and their students get to 3rd grade and they realize, you know what, my students don't have a great feeder school to go to. I'm gonna actually expand my charter and go to 12th grade. Or we have individuals that say, you know what, I want to go back into policy or law and really make a wider change. So I'm going to appoint a successor, and then that person could actually go through one of our other programs called LENS, which stands for Leaders of Emerging Network Schools. And that program is actually open to every kind of educator. And we train them under some of our BES proven models. So we have traditional public school leaders in that, and we also have charter school leaders. So about the commitment, it's much more than just that 4 years, because of the investment and also because the person's investment in their own school. But the anticipation that they stay with their school forever is not there, even though I will say that 80% of our fellows that have founded their schools in the last 10 years are still leading their school.
Perfect. Thanks,
Yeah.
Amanda.
Of course, you're
Another
welcome.
question that came in is, do candidates need to be authorized to work in the U.S.?
Yes, they do. We do not offer sponsorships, and that's specifically through BES. And that's not specifically through BES. And the reason for that is because our funding, without our funding, we wouldn't have our schools. And so each of our funders requires different things in each region. And so it's typically a requirement of our funders that person be a resident.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
I will give it a minute and see if any more pop up here in the chat.
Of course. And I always tell people when I talk to them, it's always as soon as you hang up the phone, that's when the questions come to mind. So again, happy to have conversations or just email conversations as well, whatever questions do come up after this call ends.
Absolutely, Amanda.
Amy,
yeah, go ahead.
Just real quick, one more just popped in here.
Sure.
I just want to make sure we got to it. It says, is there a summer intern on ramp?
Great question. Yes. So one of our programs that I didn't dive into, it's called the Summer Leaders Institute. And just a caveat, Summer Leaders Institute for 2020 was canceled, unfortunately, because of just what's happening in the world. But a little bit of information about the Summer Leaders Institute. It is a 4-week intensive residency that actually takes place at one of our schools. And so this, the summer leader would actually join the staff at that school for the summer. They work on various projects, and it really does range. It could be everything from implementing STEM curriculum for lower elementary. It could be overhauling operations to run more efficiently. So it really does run the gamut. So it's really pushing both the instructional experience and also the operational and logistical experience. Because again, we know people come into the fellowship and summer leaders with those different perspectives. And so what we consider the Summer Leaders Institute an accelerated pathway to the fellowship. And it is a paid stipend. I do want to point that out. It's a paid residency. And it's 4 weeks, so 20 business days of work. And what happens after that is, because these summer leaders actually get to work one-on-one with our staff members and our fellowship team, they will actually personally invite summer leaders that have just done an outstanding job to come into the fellowship the following year. Another caveat, it is not a requirement for the fellowship, but it really does pave the way, and it's a very small snapshot of what the fellowship is like.
Thank you.
Yes.
Sorry, Amy. Sorry to interrupt, Amy. It's all yours.
Oh, no, that's awesome. I'm glad we got some additional questions in there. So I know, Amanda, you said that you will provide us with some links that can direct people to specific data on your information on your website. So
Yes.
What will happen now for everyone is we will take this recorded presentation and make sure that it is suitable for socializing. And so you'll look to see that from Heather as well as those links. And then you can feel free, anybody that's joined us today, to learn more about BES. You can reach out to Heather or I, and we'll be sure to forward those messages to Amanda, or you can just reach out to her, connect with her directly, because she's provided her information very kindly. So we just want to thank everybody for joining us, and Amanda, you as well. And
Thank you.
Let us know, guys, if we can help with any information or connecting you with the fabulous BES folks. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.